Welcome to Forward Progress on the Hammer Betting Network. On this Tuesday, October 24th, we've got an action-packed show. We'll discuss the Monday Night Football game, including who did we learn more about last night, some film analysis on two specific games, and we'll discuss all the young QBs and how they've progressed so far this year. Plus, we're going to preview the Thursday Night Football game. Just a reminder, Forward Progress every Monday to Friday, 2 o'clock. If you're not already, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and like this content. Please smash that like button. Of course, none of this would be possible without our sponsor, Pinnacle. Pinnacle is the world's sharpest sports book and available to bettors in Ontario. Find out what the pros have known for the last 25 years. Everyday competitive odds, your trusted sports book. Bet smart, bet Pinnacle. Must be 19 plus in Ontario, not available in the U.S. With that being said, I'm your host, George Tsilfidis, and I'm excited to get this show on the road. I'm joined every Tuesday by SharpClarke, NFL originator, betting analyst at 4for4.com. Clark, how are you?
Good. How are you, George?
I'm doing well. I want to start with the Monday Night Football game, and let's start off with the Minnesota Vikings specifically. I made the point to Suma yesterday on the show that I think Brian Flores has been the best defensive hire this offseason, just because we all had expectations of a bad defense, and we said at best case scenario, they'd be league average. Well, he has them playing at their best case scenario right now. Have you been impressed by Brian Flores?
Definitely. I mean, he's a super aggressive defensive play caller, which tends to mean better performances against bad quarterbacks. But what I've been really impressed with is their week-to-week consistency. Like, they're really bringing it. Like, they're getting top-level performances out of guys that otherwise haven't really been notable in their career. And I think defensive scheme is one of those things that can really overcome a deficit in talent if it's done correctly. You'll never beat the best offenses consistently without talent, but what Brian Flores is doing both in Miami and now in Minnesota, it just proves that a defensive coordinator can have that kind of impact on a game.
Yeah, I still remember the performance he put up against the Rams in the Super Bowl with the Patriots. He won them like they won 13-3. That was a Brian Flores masterclass. Kirk Cousins has himself a massive game. And I think my question is this a case of just big game in a big spot, or did he expose some of San Fran's defensive liabilities? I often talk to Rob on streams and I say, I still question San Fran's corners outside of Charvarius Ward. I think when teams have multiple passing options, San Fran can be a little bit vulnerable. Do you think that Kirk Cousins exposed some of that, or are you just chalking it up to one big game in one big spot?
I think Cousins played a really, really good game, but the 49ers defense basically are only vulnerable through the air. Like, if you're trying short passes for yards after the catch, like, they tackle so well, the gang tackle. What I loved about what Minnesota did was set up, things like that screen on that blitz for the touchdown. It's like using the 49ers aggressiveness against them. And a lot of that can be done with really creative play calling. But Kirk Cousins was just nails downfield, like, standing in the pocket, like he does. He waits until the last second. He knows when the pressure's coming. He takes a hit and he just delivers it. And I think, Cousins really made a statement about this Vikings team and his place on the team. I think this was kind of if they lose this game, the Vikings might kind of shift into future evaluation mode. How long do we really want to be the Kirk Cousins Vikings? And I think winning that game was sort of no, we're going to play this year. Like, we're going to go for the division this year. Like, this was such a massive game for them. And I think Cousins delivering says a lot about him. Kevin O'Connell too, the way they handled that game plan, it was really, really impressive. I'm not overly concerned about the 49ers defense. They haven't been quite as good as they were last year, but still a very, very good defense. And it takes a really good quarterback to capitalize.
All right, let's address their offense then. A couple weeks ago, we talked about Brock Purdy, and I mentioned that he has one career fourth quarter comeback. And we talked about him playing in fortunate game scripts. 2 weeks later, 2 tight games. Still only has one fourth quarter comeback drive, although, a 41-yard field goal would have changed that. So perspective. But what do you make of that? Brock Purdy's now being tested and not getting to play with a 10 to 14 point lead the entire game.
I think Purdy's been fine. I mean, my evaluation of him hasn't really changed at all. Like, he really struggled in Cleveland, and there were a lot of circumstances for why that happened. Last night, I thought he was okay. Like, I mean, he's not a difference maker. We talked about this a couple weeks ago before any of the losses came. I said he's not a difference maker at quarterback. When things are great, he's going to be good because he handles himself well. He throws fairly accurately. He moves fairly well. He reads defenses fairly well. Like everything he does is just kind of like, yeah, it's pretty good. But he doesn't do anything exceptional. And last night, I felt like there were a lot of circumstances that went against them. They missed another field goal early. That was pretty big. Christian McCaffrey fumbles, on a run inside the 10-yard line of the Vikings. Like he was just, lights out that drive until that point. So I don't really pin the loss on Purdy. I think, the touchdown by Addison before the half on the Vikings, like could have been an interception, ended up being a 60-yard touchdown pass with 13 seconds left. Like so much variance went against the 49ers in that game that I don't come away overly concerned with them out of that game or Purdy.
Yeah, we talk about them also being like quarterback proof just because, I don't know that there'll be a gigantic drop off if Sam Darnold ever came in. But we talk about their offensive line as far as a talent perspective goes, and it's not great, but the scheme makes up for it. When you take out Trent Williams, who is great at his job, it all of a sudden they did have some blocking issues last night. So it's not maybe Purdy's not the catalyst for if the offense will struggle, but Trent Williams might be a big part because the Vikings defense won the trench battle last night.
Yeah, and you saw them favoring the right side of the line on runs, especially early. And I think McCaffrey's done a ton of his work on the left side. And so it did make a difference. I thought they did a pretty good job overall of overcoming the loss of Trent Williams outside of those, crazy variance plays. I think they played a pretty good game. Purdy had to deliver in crunch time, forced the pass, taking the run game off the table, didn't do so. That's pretty typical of quarterbacks of that, that style. And nothing to fire the panic button about, but they do need to get Trent Williams healthy. That makes a big difference.
All right, let's do some film review. For those that don't know, Monday, Clark and I will text, hey, which game do you want to talk about? When Clark said, sometimes we like to talk about the same games. When Clark said Colts Browns, I'm like, that wasn't even my top 5 games that I wanted to talk about because that was the kitchen sink game and everything happened. But you want to dive into this game. So, Clark, what were you seeing in the Indianapolis Colts Cleveland Browns game?
This game was as drunk as the score indicated. And I think everybody saw the end of the game because the way red zone works and the way the timing of the game worked, it was like the only game still going on for like a good portion of the morning. So I don't want to talk about the end of the game. Like, yes, the pass was probably not catchable, et cetera, or whatever. So I want to talk about kind of like earlier in the game, some important takeaways moving forward. The first is that Deshaun Watson sucked. He was so bad in that game. And I don't think a lot of people saw that because that was before, the game became the highlight. When he got hurt, and then it was sort of like, is he hurt? Is he being benched? And it was like, yeah, we're like protecting him. And it was like, I'm not saying that they benched him for performance reasons and that they think PJ Walker's a better quarterback. But what I'm saying is I wouldn't be surprised if there was an element of that in there. And I think there's a lot of confusion in that quarterback room moving forward because of the way Deshaun Watson has played. I can't overstate how bad he was. He was actively hurting the Browns team before he went down in that game. On the other side of the ball, there's this pattern that happens, I think, sometimes with backup quarterbacks where, the first game in, the backup quarterback performs at a high level and then kind of like trails off from there. And a lot of that has to do with backup quarterbacks tending to be less aggressive, backup quarterbacks not being able to do the things that the starter can do. And I think what I saw in this game was very impressive from Minshew in 2 ways. The first was I downgraded the Colts with Minshew because he's not able to execute the run game the same way Anthony Richardson is. When he runs those read options, when you have Anthony Richardson, a guy like Lamar Jackson, like the entire defense has to play differently. And Gardner Minshew took some of those run pass options and he took them himself and he did it well. And he scored 2 touchdowns, I believe, on those types of plays. Also made some other plays. So not only was that successful against the best defense in the NFL, but that is put on film now. So as other teams come in to prepare for this Colts offense, they have to account for that. And so I'm kind of like shifting the Colts back up in terms of their run game for that. And then the second thing is Minshew is very aggressive and he will put the ball in places where his guys can go get it. Josh Downs and Michael Pittman. This is kind of like the Ryan Fitzpatrick backup style where the guys actually play better with the backup because the backup gives them a chance to make those plays. And so I think this is a situation where the backup quarterback ends up being a starter caliber player for the Colts. I'm not really concerned about their offense moving forward. I think they have a chance to remain competitive this year, even with Minshew.
Totally. You said the part about Watson. He was bouncing around on the sidelines during the game, and I kept thinking to myself, he's getting paid $260 million for 5 years. And I'm wondering, do his teammates even look at him as the leader anymore? Because to me,
Did
Myles
they
Garrett,
ever?
you would assume they did, but I am on board with, there's no way that they sit there and they can respect and think and have confidence that they've got this leader at quarterback that's going to take them anywhere. Myles Garrett literally had to do everything to win that game because the Colts, like, they had 7 yards per play offensively. If it wasn't for those high variance plays, Cleveland doesn't walk away with the W. The one thing I will say is Jonathan Taylor is starting to look like 2 years ago Jonathan Taylor. And I'm excited to see what he can do in Steichen's offense without Richardson or not, because he was flashing everywhere in the pass game and the run game. I had the under in this game, Clark, and you know what? I'm no longer going to profile Indy as a team to watch out for an unders because, like you said, Minshew brings a layer of chaos to the game, which creates both positive and negative big plays. And because of that, I just can't trust the Colts in an under. Clark, I watched the Bills and the Patriots. I wrote my title, Bill Belichick still has his fastball. The Patriots secondary is finally healthy again. They finally got Jack Jones off of IR. Jonathan Jones is back. They made a trade for JC Jackson. So I want to start the Bills' first pass of the game. Jabril Peppers drifts back. They're playing a zone, and it's the whole bait Allen to throw into a window that doesn't exist. First play of the game, pick them off. And usually interceptions are either, a wrong route thrown or a poorly thrown ball. This was purely bait. And I said, okay, that's something Buffalo, that New England put on tape. What did the Patriots do offensively? More misdirection, motion, getting Mac on the move. A lot of quick hitters. So the Patriots were only sacked once because their O-line is a concern this year. Mac Jones was getting the ball out in 2.1 seconds per pass. They also became a more horizontal offense, and they don't have the vertical threats, or Mac doesn't have the arm to make those throws, but they're going to make you defend the whole field sideway to sideway. A lot of their throws were thrown right at the sideline. And I thought that was quite an interesting offensive game plan. I also think the Patriots are a nightmare matchup for the Bills. Arjun Menon put out this tweet. It's well known for years now that Belichick will take away your number one weapon. He doesn't want to get beat by your number one weapon. So against number one receivers this year, Tyreek Hill had 40 yards, Garrett Wilson 48, CeeDee Lamb 36, Chris Olave 12, Devontae Adams 29, and Stephon Diggs 58 yards. Against a team like the Bills, who are so reliant on their number one weapon, the Patriots are actually a very tough matchup for them in that perspective. And the last thing I'll say is a positive. Mac Jones gets a lot of crap. Like, we did a poll on BetStamp, and they eliminated who the worst quarterbacks are in football. He was in the finals, and I said, no, Mac Jones is not one of the 2 worst quarterbacks in football. He had like a stretch where he made like 11 of 12 throws, and he threw a pretty ball to Pharaoh Brown, tight coverage to the only spot that he could catch it. As for Buffalo, I think the Bills telegraphed something with their play action game, because I was looking up. They've had one of the best play action game for years, and part of that's because of how dangerous Josh Allen is. Like, he had like a 94 PFF rating entering the game. This game in particular, 28.4 on play action pass, only completed 4 passes out of 10. So clearly Bill Belichick, they were not biting on, and I observed this at first. I'm like, they're not biting on any of this play action. They're not, nobody's getting deep past them or anything like that. I said, okay, Bill put something together on film. The other observation I had with Buffalo is James Cook needs to be used more in the pass game. When you don't have as many great weapons, James Cook like ran a beautiful pass. Like, he looked like a receiver in the seam, caught a nice ball. He's 18th in the league in targets for running back. He has 21 in 3 games. So he only averages 21 in 7 games. So he only averages 3 targets per game. But there's 8 guys ahead of him who have played less games. Despite that, he's second in the league at 10.9 yards per catch. You need to use him more. James Cook is a weapon. You drafted him with the purpose of using him in the pass game, and you're not doing it enough. So my takeaway from this was I came away impressed by what Bill Belichick did. Josh Allen also did miss a lot of throws. He missed some throws to Stephon Diggs. Dawson Knox dropped a 4th and 2. But I think New England was never as bad as their record was. And I think people need to recognize with their secondary getting healthy again, this Patriots team might be closer to the average team that we thought they were, as opposed to talking about them drafting a quarterback.
Yeah, totally agree. I think the big takeaway is that last part. They've been underrated the whole season. They faced a really tough schedule. They've been in some difficult situations, and what they did against the Bills defense was really impressive. This is a weakened Bills defense, obviously missing multiple huge components of their defense, but there's still a defense that you have to be good to beat them. Like they will be beaten by good quarterbacks. That's kind of how my stance on the Bills defense now. I never want to give the edge to the Bills defense in a game against a good offense. And what the Patriots showed is that they can be a good offense. They were, Mac Jones was making the throws, placing the ball well, getting the ball out quick. They ran the ball effectively. They had all the components of a successful offense. And I think that's a really good sign for the Patriots moving forward. This schedule doesn't get much easier. So, let's see how much it really translates to wins. But I came away optimistic on the Patriots. And the Bills, we talk about the Chiefs figuring out their offense over the course of the season, and we're not concerned. We say, they'll figure it out by the time the games really matter. And for some reason, we don't have the same attitude towards the Bills. And I think that kind of has to do with the success the Chiefs have had in the playoffs, right? Because if your whole thing with the Bills is, you'll figure it out in the postseason, that hasn't happened yet, right? They haven't delivered in the postseason in the way the Chiefs have. So we'll see. We'll see if that attitude is going to work, but I'm still kind of in, let's give the Bills time to figure out their new offensive pieces. They did lose Dawson Knox now. But I think they have time to develop still.
I'm telling you, Clark, it's James Cook. Like, the guy averages 11 yards per catch. He catches, they're not dump offs and screens. He's running routes and he looks clean. They need to use him more. He's a weapon out of the backfield. All right, Clark, let's talk about young quarterbacks. We talked about this excludes rookie quarterbacks where we have no priors on, but one of the fun things in the offseason is let's look at all the young quarterbacks without a sample size and project how good or bad they are going to be, because this is our opportunity to maybe catch a team that's underrated and make some money off them. And, the 4 of the big ones were Sam Howell, Desmond Ridder, Kenny Pickett, Jordan Love. I want to go breakdown by breakdown on what we've seen so far, because now we're starting to get a sample size on them, right? We're at 7 games this year. Some of them we had, 5-6 games the year before. So we're getting ideas on who these guys are. And I want to know if you're still optimistic on them, pessimistic on them. Let's start with Sam Howell. Clark, what do you think of when you think of Sam Howell?
I think he'll be a very good career backup. He takes too many sacks, which is not news to anybody that's watching this. Yes, his offensive line is doing him no favors. This is not 100% on Sam Howell. The scheme and the quarterback and the offensive line have coalesced into an offense where he's just constantly under siege. But he's not able to transcend that, or he makes a couple nice plays each game where it's like, wow, that was a really nice throw. He put it exactly where the receiver could get it, really downfield. He just doesn't do it consistently enough to be, in my opinion, an NFL starter. The other problem with him taking so many hits, both on sacks and scrambles, is if he's your guy, if he's the guy you're relying to be the starter, he's susceptible to injury. He's not a big dude. He hasn't gotten injured yet, but I wouldn't be shocked if he gets injured this year. And I do think he can be the Ryan Fitzpatrick type backup, where you've got a contending team with a very good quarterback, and he's the guy that you can break glass in case of emergency and not abandon your season. He can do the job of quarterback. I just don't see it as a franchise every season kind of guy that you want to go into the season with.
One thing that concerns me is, so we all know the story of how he takes sacks. The other thing is he loses a lot of yardage on his sacks. He doesn't step up in the pocket. Clark, he sees it coming. He keeps going backwards, and then he just turtles down in a fetal position and he waits to get hit. I don't like that. Bieniemy has no counterpunch. Wink Martindale, if there's ever been a book on who Wink Martindale is, he's gonna blitz you a lot of times. Him and Brian Flores compete every year to see who can send the house more. And the Commanders, they had no screen game, they had no quick slants, everything was still 15-20 yard passes downfield. And if Wink Martindale did that to you, I wonder if teams just say, you know what are we even doing trying to play defense against this team? Let's just start blitzing the hell out of Sam Howell until he proves that he can actually step up and beat the blitz, or Bieniemy starts calling plays about it. So my concern is maybe the bottom's going to fall out, and we might still see an uglier bottom that hasn't come yet with Sam Howell. So I'm pessimistic on him as a starter. I think he's got enough talent to stick around in the league.
I will push back a little bit on that, because in the second half against the Giants, they started doing a lot more moving pockets where Sam Howell took the snap and immediately was running side to side. The problem is he's just not that good of a quarterback in that situation. Like, he's a pocket quarterback. He needs the pocket. He needs to see the whole field. He needs time to make those decisions, and that's not happening. So they did have a counterpunch. It just didn't. I mean, it worked okay, right? They scored 0 points in the first half.
It came too late. It came too late.
Yeah, it came too late. But I think they're still figuring stuff out. Like, I'm not writing him off completely. Like, he's got talent, but based on what we've seen so far to date, it's not a guy that I'm getting excited about.
All right, let's talk about Desmond Ridder, and I will let you lead off because you, for some reason, we painted you as the Desmond Ridder guy on Twitter. I don't know why, but whenever he did something bad, Clark got tagged on Twitter. So he's had a pretty good 3-game stretch. So Clark, why don't you fight back a little?
I want to quote the ESPN recap headline for the Falcons-Bucks game because this is absolutely unhinged. This is the headline from the game. Koo's game-ending 51-yard field goal helps Falcons overcome Ridder's mistakes, beat Buccaneers 16-13. That is an absurd headline. Desmond Ridder was mostly fantastic against the Bucks. The Bucks are a top 10 defense, and he was 19 of 25 for 250 yards, 1 sack for 5 yards. He had 6 rushes for 38 yards and should have been 2 touchdowns, but one of them got taken off the board because a defender punched the ball out of his arm as he crossed the goal line, which is the stupidest rule in the history of sports. That was a turnover. Anyway, he was fantastic. He led the game-winning drive. He had a beautiful pass to Kyle Pitts on the sideline, overturned, is incomplete. He comes right back, 38 yards to Kyle Pitts, sets up the game-winning field goal. Desmond Ridder is not great, but he is growing. He is getting comfortable. They are passing the ball a ton. Like, they're not just, this whole game was without Bijan Robinson, or for 1 snap. I don't know what's going on with that, but they are relying on him in the passing game to make plays. He's making plays out of structure. He's seeing the pressure. It's like the anti-Sam Howell. I've been very, very impressed with Ridder these last couple of games, and I think what Arthur Smith has been building is starting to show. Now, I don't think they're a competitive team at this point in their juncture, but they have an easy schedule. So they're 4-2. They're right on pace to make the playoffs, potentially win the division. And I think that level of winning covers over a multitude of sins. And I think allowing the Falcons having such an easy road is allowing Ridder to build up that confidence. And I do think, I think at the end of the season, we're going to look back and I think the Falcons are going to be happy to go into next year with Ridder as their starter.
Okay. Well, let's talk about Ridder in 2 perspectives. If you look at him through the season, you point to the fact that he's like 25th in EPA per play. But like, my pushback is he was 10th in success rate over the period of the season. So outside of a couple back-breaking throws, he's been pretty good at moving the ball and having some success. But I want to look at Ridder in a vacuum of 3 games, his last 3 games, because we're trying to project improvement, right? He's at start 9 or 10 of his career. This is what happens in a rookie year, right? The growth happens in the second half of the year. Last 3 weeks, 9th in EPA per play, so he got rid of a lot of the throwing errors. 2nd in success rate, only behind Patrick Mahomes. 10th in air yards. He's not checking it down. And Suma made a great point yesterday that Kyle Pitts looks healthier. He was coming off an injury, and maybe he wasn't ready or up to his old speed early in the season, but he looks better. They're involving Drake London more in the pass game. So what I say is I'm a little bit optimistic in that I think you need to put a little bit more stock in the last 3 games where Ridder has shown some improvement versus judging the beginning of the season where he was still essentially a rookie. So Desmond Ridder, I don't know how good his ceiling will be, but his arrow's pointing up on him. And I think the Falcons offense is moving the ball better. You're not going to fumble it 3 times inside the 20 again. They should have actually blown out the Bucks. The Bucks are very lucky to have had a chance to win the game at the end of the game. Let's talk about Kenny Pickett. Clark, how do you start to evaluate Kenny Pickett?
I think Kenny Pickett's been the best of this group. He's been dealing with some difficult circumstances too, in losing Deontay Johnson as number one, Pat Frymuth as tight end. The run game hasn't been particularly effective, so it's been a lot on his shoulders. And I think he's okay. I think his ceiling is pretty capped because he's simply not capable of methodically beating a fairly decent zone defense, which is what a lot of NFL teams see these days. He's much more like, I'm going to throw it up, kind of like what I said about Gardner Minshew. Like, I'm going to throw it up and put it where the receiver can get it, but he's really, really good at that. Like, George Pickens is a monster and can snag anything, but Pickett also puts it in a spot where Pickens can do that. Really, really impressed with his ball placement, but that's about it. He doesn't read defense particularly well. He bails pockets too quickly still. These aren't the types of things that quarterbacks tend to improve in a way that changes them from a mediocre quarterback to a superstar quarterback. So I think the ceiling is very, very limited here. But in today's NFL, and this is kind of the backdrop for this whole conversation, is the quarterback play across the league is pretty bad right now. I don't know if defenses are just figuring stuff out. So guys like Desmond Ridder, guys like Kenny Pickett that have material flaws in their game, but can otherwise get the job done and move the offense. If they're put on a team with the right weapons and the right scheme and a good defense, like, they can be a competitive team in today's NFL. And so no Pickett, no Ridder, no Howell will ever be Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. They just don't have that in them. But the question is, do you want to move on as quickly as possible, or do you want to kind of build around them and see if they can be a competitive player? And I think the Steelers have someone they can build around with Kenny Pickett. So I'm not pulling the plug on Pickett yet.
So I have no good answer for Kenny Pickett. Clark, have you ever tried to build a puzzle with a lot of pieces missing, but also no picture on the box, so you don't even know what you're building? That's what I feel like evaluating Kenny Pickett is right now. It's bad O-line, non-existent run game, poor play caller. Deontay Johnson and Pat Frymuth have been hurt. And on top of it, they played San Fran's defense and Cleveland's defense and Baltimore's defense. Like, he's had a gauntlet of games so far, and anyone who can say with absolute certainty that he's a very bad quarterback, I think that's something you can't make based on what you've seen. So I continue to evaluate and try to learn about Kenny Pickett and the Steelers offense. I will say they looked a lot better with Deontay Johnson. He is a good receiver, and he actually creates for George Pickens because he's not the focus of the offense when Deontay Johnson's out. Let's look at Jordan Love. I will start with him. He is a mixed bag. I'll tell you what I like about him, and then I'd like to hear your counter. I continue to think he has the highest upside. I just think he needs to figure out his deep ball. Like, he continues to make big mistakes when he throws the ball deep. I'd like to see a healthy version of this offense. I don't think we ever will. Like, even when guys are back, they get hurt in the game. The two things that stand out for me is he's 14th in EPA per play, 20th in success rate. So they're not methodical, but he's second in air yards with 9.5 yards per throw. He likes to throw it and sling it. And Matt LaFleur came out and said, listen, this is an evaluation year for us. So maybe a lot of us who have predicted a Green Bay upside, maybe Green Bay's expectations internally were a lot more tempered and they wanted to see what they have in Love. I want a quarterback who's willingly taking shots downfield and not afraid to test the limits of what he can do and what he can throw, as opposed to one that lives down low and never grows out of that habit. I think when you check down early in your career, you end up being Derek Carr or Alex Smith. I like that Jordan Love has a willingness to take deep shots. He just needs to throw it way better, because a lot of his picks are just simply on balls thrown 20 yards or more. So for me, even though Jordan Love hasn't been great, I've seen enough flashes, and I continue to think he has an upside. Whether he reaches it or not, and he ends up being a good quarterback or not, it remains to be seen. But if you tell me who has the best chance of these four quarterbacks to have the best career, the biggest ceiling, I think it's Jordan Love.
The thing I don't like about Jordan Love is that every play seems to be all or nothing. Like, he's either hitting guys that he's decided before the play started, like, I'm going to hit this out route. I'm going to hit this screen. These kind of short throws. Or he's just looking downfield and just chucking bombs. Like, he doesn't have a mid-range game, right? You watch the Chiefs offense, you watch the Dolphins offense, and both Patrick Mahomes and Tua, and I know those are, unfair comparisons, but
Yeah.
both of them are looking at the field, and you'll see like a 15-yard, accurate pass downfield to a guy that's wide open, and part of that is scheming, part of that is speed of his receivers, and Jordan Love doesn't have the best weapons, but it just feels like there's nothing consistently over the middle, to the sideline, 15 yards downfield. There's no mid-range game, and that has really crushed this Packers offense. They've really struggled on offense. If he can hit on those deep shots, then suddenly they have a couple drives that game that are successful. But if he doesn't, this is a very bad offense. And as long as that's the case, like, I don't really see the upside with Jordan Love. I came into the season very optimistic on the Packers' upside. Injuries have derailed that, but also Love's performance has derailed that. He hasn't put it together in a way that I would have liked to have seen. And I think until I see a more well-balanced offensive performance out of him, I'm out on Jordan Love for now.
It's going to be an interesting dynamic when they play Brian Flores and Flores dials up the blitz, and what's going to come of that game. I have not bet against Green Bay, but I am down on Green Bay. There are still people out there, Clark, believe it or not, that have seen everything they've seen with Green Bay and are still willingly putting money on this team. I think you people are crazy. It's either you bet against Green Bay or you wait and see until they show something. For you to still be pounding Green Bay, I don't get it. I get it. They were playing Denver, but there was nothing about that game or a confidence level for me that got me to put my money down on Green Bay. And that'll probably be.
Don't tell them to stop. I'm grateful. I've faded the Packers the last couple of weeks. It's been great.
Well, even the line, like, I think Green Bay got out to 1.5-2 before the Monday night game was played, and I'm like, my numbers showed the game was closer to pick. I also bet Minnesota +7 and believe they were live against San Francisco. So I said, are people just expecting Green Bay, Minnesota to look so bad against San Fran that the line will naturally move towards Green Bay? Because I couldn't understand why people are so willingly putting money on Green Bay even early in the week when there's still injury concerns. We don't know the status of Jair Alexander or Luke Musgrave or Christian Watson, but there are some maniacs out there. Yeah. There's maniacs out there who refuse to quit the Packers. Clark, I think it's a good segue. Let's talk about some market moves and some interesting things we're seeing. This feels like a weird week as far as big point spreads. I guess if you love teasers, this is your week to shine because there's so many plays in big range. Let's start off with maybe Jacksonville and Pittsburgh. The line was closer to, Jacksonville is a small favorite. It's gotten all the way out to 2.5. Jacksonville looked pretty good on Thursday Night Football. Do you think we can get to the 3, or do you think it'll be immediate buyback on Pittsburgh?
I think there will be. I think there might have been already. I think I maybe saw 3 yesterday that kind of got bought up. I think we'll be dancing on that 2.5-3 line pretty much all week. There's the Steelers. I think Zuma talks about the Mike Tomlin voodoo magic. Like, it's tough to bet against them because every time it's like this number seems off based on their quality of play to date, and then the game starts and it's like, yeah, how do they make the kicker miss another field goal? Like, how do they force the quarterback to make that mistake? It's crazy. So, laying points on the road with a potentially banged up Jags team, although they do get 10 days rest, I think is going to scare enough people off to where the 3 will typically get bought up in the spot.
Houston, Carolina. Houston is at 3. At one point, they went a little bit higher. A service gave out Carolina +3, brought it back under the 3. Then there was buyback on Houston. This looks like a two-way game. I think 3 is the right number. That's the number I make it. I have no interest in this game. Both teams coming off a bye. Frank Reich is playing against the quarterback he wanted, and he's got to do it with the quarterback he didn't want. At least that's the narrative I'm going with. Is 3 the fair number here? 2 unproven teams off a bye, 2 young quarterbacks. It feels almost wrong to make Houston a bigger favorite, and I can't put money down on Carolina yet until I see something from them.
Yeah, I think 3 is probably fair. It's kind of like you said, right? Teams like Carolina, right? They're winless. They've really not shown anything, they have a rookie quarterback. They've got a first time coaching staff. Everyone's new. They had a bye week to figure some things out. Like teams like that can materially improve over the course of the season.
Yeah.
And trying, like, if you're in the business of trying to time which game that happens in, like, oh, they had the bye week, now they're gonna like turn on the Jets and like turn it up. Maybe you're right. Maybe the Panthers win outright and it's like, hey, see, I told you they were gonna turn, right? But like that's not the type of betting that I typically get involved in. Like I do expect them to have a performance that surprises people at some point in the next few weeks. I'm just not, going to roll my money out there that this is the week against the Texans team that's been pretty good.
There's this thing about betting upside or potential, right? And this goes for anything, fantasy, betting sports. You can call a team and say, hey, man, they're going to get better. And you could do it 10 times in a row. And on the 10th time they finally do, you were wrong 9 times before then. So I don't want to be the first to declare anything. And I don't want to be the first to pretend that Carolina has life. Maybe this new play caller that Frank Reich gave the duties to is going to be better. Until I see something, I don't want to get involved with a team like Carolina. Washington gets upset by the Giants. They look pretty bad. Philadelphia looks pretty good on Sunday Night Football. The line is 6.5. In some places, it's 7. Clark, were you surprised to see this number open up under the 7, or is it just listen, Washington always plays Philly tight. My numbers say Philly should be higher. Or is this just a product of, hey, Jalen Hurts has a knee thing and we're not sure if he's got a mobile game to him, because it didn't look like he was running all that well against Miami.
Yeah, I was a little surprised. My numbers also make it a little higher here. There's the knee thing with Hurts. There's, the Eagles have had some injuries off and on, although they look fairly healthy right now. Devonta Smith got a little banged up in that game. I don't really think anything is too concerning. There is the issue of, people being able to throw on the Eagles every single game, right? We saw Howell do it in their first matchup. We saw the Dolphins do it. Tyreek Hill drops a walk-in touchdown. There was, I think, a penalty overturned another one. There was a non-call on a penalty that would have set up another. Like there were plenty of ways the Eagles defense should have gotten beaten on Sunday night. And I think on the road, laying a big number against an offense with a quarterback with a live arm that already scored 31 against them the first time. Maybe that's keeping this down, but I wouldn't imagine stomaching a Washington bet at 6.5. Like that seems stupid.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I want to ask you about this game because so last week, San Fran was favored by 7, and my numbers told me the line should be lower. My underlying metrics also agreed that the line should be tighter. And then the matchup itself, I liked Minnesota when you considered no Debo, no Trent Williams. Then I have games in situations where I have a conflict in what I'm seeing on film and what my underlying metrics are saying. This one is Rams and Cowboys. My numbers say it's supposed to be a tad higher on the other side of 7. My metrics say they're a lot closer to each other. So this is like confusion game for me. And I think this is going to be a game people want to bet, Rams and Cowboys. I don't know what to make of the game. It's 6 in some places. It's 6.5. My numbers say I'm supposed to bet Dallas. I refuse to do it. I don't like them in this spot. How do you read a game like this? And how do you deal with conflict when, some of your buy signals are crossed?
I think the best way to handle those games is to not play them. You typically want to have multiple reasons that you're playing a bet. And one thing I'm trying to work on is if I can't articulate why there's a difference between the market price and my numbers, then I won't bet it. That's something I haven't been as disciplined on this season, and it's cost me in a couple spots where I've been like, yeah, my numbers just say bet it. I don't understand why the market's saying this, but my numbers say bet it, and that's typically not been a good spot for me. So in a situation like that, I look at my numbers and I see what my model says, and it's like, okay, what is the market overweighting, underweighting? What are they missing? What narrative or metric is driving this, in my opinion, incorrect line? And if I cannot identify that, then it's just a no play for me.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. When the Miami Dolphins opened up as 10.5 point favorites on New England, I knew right away that was the wrong line.
Me too.
I took a piece of New England. And I still think at 9.5, it's higher than where I have the number, and I think it will continue to climb down. My question to you is, is New England, like we talked about how they're a tough matchup for Buffalo, but with a healthy secondary, are they also a tough matchup for the Dolphins? Because if they take away Tyreek Hill, which they did in the first matchup, last time they gave away the run to Miami, but they played us tight. Like there's nothing about that game that ever said, Miami's going to blow you up by 2 scores. This is not New York. This is not Carolina, who had no resistance defensively. New England can put up some resistance, and Miami still has a lot of injuries. Like we lost, our left guard in the game, and our center and left tackle were out, and Xavier Howard was out. It just feels like an odd spot for such a big line.
I think injuries will drive the action in this one. Fully healthy, I don't think the Patriots defense can hang with the Dolphins because they don't have the speed. Like if everyone's healthy, the Dolphins are just too fast and they have too many ways to beat you. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if the offensive line is hurt, if Waddle is hurt, we saw, I guess David Long got cleared. He didn't have a concussion after that collision, which would be good news for the Dolphins. But there's enough question marks here on the injury report to where I think 9.5 is sort of being like, yeah, the Dolphins are healthy, whereas if one or two of those guys turns out not practicing, Wednesday, Thursday, questionable, then I think this line does come closer to a 7.
All right. Pinnacle has it 8.5 minus 117 Miami. I think it will not close 9.5. I think we're going to go lower for those who care about market moves when they make their bets. Just a few more games, because I don't really, there's only so many ways to talk about a spread that's an 8-point favorite. Well, there's an expectation of victory and question marks. Let's talk Atlanta, Tennessee. This game has been pushing Atlanta's way. I think the markets believe Tannehill will be out. He has high ankle sprain. Last time he needed surgery on it. I can't see a world where he plays. They still had other injuries too. Treylon Burks wasn't playing before the bye. DeAndre Hopkins hurt his hand. They traded Bayard, so we don't know if there's going to be another trade in the next few days. Plus, Atlanta's look pretty good. Does the line change for you if it's Malik Willis or Will Levis?
I think
quarterback do you want to see in order for you to come in on Atlanta or maybe Tennessee?
I think if I'm betting on Tennessee, I don't want to see Malik Willis. I think we've seen enough out of him to know that he's not the difference maker at quarterback. Whereas Will Levis, at least we don't know. we don't know who Levis is. We've seen rookie quarterbacks, come in mid-season and look pretty good right from the jump. We saw Baker Mayfield do that. We saw Justin Herbert do that. So even though they're not starting week 1, sometimes just having that kind of cushion can help. So if I'm betting Atlanta, then I'd like to see Malik Willis. If I'm betting Tennessee, I'd like to see more of Will Levis, assuming Ryan Tannehill doesn't go. And I do think that once Tannehill is confirmed out, then I think this does kind of get to the 3, which is going to be a much more interesting back and forth fight, I think, at the 3, because laying 3 with Desmond Ridder on the road against a pretty good defense is a tough spot to stomach.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the Titans traded Kevin Byard, and like you have to imagine they're having conversations about other guys too. You have to wonder what the level of focus is for a 2-4 team with their starting quarterback, with an ankle injury, looking towards the future. Mike Vrabel, you should never assume Mike Vrabel is not going to prepare his team for a game, but we saw the Bears last year after they traded away their best defensive players completely crumble on defense. I mean, historically bad. And this Titans defense is way better than the Bears were last year. But is it right to anticipate a drop-off? I think so.
Yeah, I'm with you. The bottom could come out. Plus, what does it say to the vets in the locker room that, hey, we're trading guys away? It's hard to get them all riled up and pretend like we're trying to win, and that's the main objective this year. 2 more games that I wanted to ask about. Cleveland, Seattle. Seattle sitting at 106 at Pinnacle. At some places, it's 115. Is this an in-between line? Because we don't know for sure if Deshaun Watson's going to play, right? If he does, where does the line go? And if he doesn't, the next question is where does the line go?
I'm not sure Deshaun Watson matters. I mean, I talked about this earlier. I just don't think he's good. He's not good at all.
Or at least diminished Watson to PJ Walker. There's not much of a gap.
Yeah, we're not talking about 100% healthy Deshaun Watson here. We're talking about banged up Watson versus PJ Walker, which to me is a wash. So I think bettors are betting this game regardless of quarterback. I think the line's right. Probably haven't really done my full analysis yet, but not a game I'm super pumped to get excited about. The Browns defense is so good, and their offense, I just don't trust it. So
yeah, that'll be interesting to watch. All right, last one, Bengals and 49ers. The line is at 5.5. We talked about how people are willing to project without seeing it on the field. All right, Bengals have a bye, and I heard Steve Fezzik on his show say he's upgrading them 1.5 points coming out of the bye without any games. And he said, I naturally bump teams up 0.5 point off a bye, but Burrow's going to be healthy and T. Higgins is healthy. And I guess my first question is, are we sure? Are we still 100% sure that Burrow, I know he sat for 2 weeks and he looked like he was getting healthier. Are you making a leap up when you project Cincy coming out of this bye? How do you handle this spot? Because I don't think we've ever been in a spot like this where a guy who's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league for the last couple of years has been diminished through his calf, but has improved and now is coming off a bye. It's kind of a wild card scenario about how good his level is and how to re-rank the Bengals, who are, a top 5 or 6 team to most preseason. And I don't think anybody has them or sees them in that light anymore. And obviously it's not just Burrow, it's the defense hasn't looked at the same standard, but the Bengals are a hard team to figure out. They're a bit of a wild card, right?
yeah, they are difficult. I don't do any kind of automatic bye week upgrade or trying to project out who Burrow is going to be based on 2 weeks of rest. It's tough. I will say I was lower on Burrow than most coming into the year. I think we talked about that.
Yes.
So for me, I'm not really looking to massively overweight the Bengals offensive improvement based on Burrow being better, because I think their upside is still not that high on offense.
Yeah.
But I do think I think it would be silly at this point for a better to use the Bengals offensive metrics as their baseline projection for performance. I think that would be absolutely silly. And I think you're going to end up being wrong on the Bengals. The question is, how much better are they? How much has the improvement already shown in those last 2 games before the bye? How much should we anticipate that moving forward? Are the Bengals able to roll out some things offensively that they haven't been able to roll out before because of Burrow's health concerns? Possibly. But yeah, I mean, like you said, the defense hasn't been playing as well. Cottage asked about that line. I honestly have no idea. There are some games where not only do I have a hard time pricing it myself, I have a hard time predicting how the market's going to price this one.
Yeah.
I can kind of see both sides. I think there'll be some interest on the 49ers when people kind of go through that film of that Monday night game and realize that, hey, the 49ers offense actually looked pretty good for the most part, despite missing Debo and Trent Williams. So I think that the fear that those guys would just kind of, take away everything the Niners are doing well on offense, I think that's unfounded. And I think there'll be some sort of support for the 49ers, but that has to offset what you're talking about with upgrading the Bengals on the bye week.
Well, we talked about last week how the Chiefs were coming off a Thursday night game and the Chargers were coming off a Monday night game, and Drew Dinsick called it the Widowmaker spot where, you got long rest and the other teams got short rest. Well, the Bengals are off a bye and the 49ers are off a short week. So it's an even longer rest. It's probably the largest rest discrepancy you can get in the NFL. Do you put any weight into that aspect of it? And then the other thing is we also have to watch out, Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw got hurt in the game. I don't know that they're going to miss time. So that Wednesday practice report's going to be pivotal also to find out where Trent Williams is at. I don't anticipate Debo Samuel being back. I also want to see if Burrow's on the injury report. If they don't even list him, then I've got a pretty high degree of confidence that he's good to go. There's a lot of X factors in this spot, but Clark, Bengals 2 weeks to prepare. San Fran's off a short week. Is this a weird spot that you put a little bit of weight into?
I don't really do situational handicapping like that. The widow, like last week, the Chargers Chiefs, for example, the Chiefs are just a way better team. The Chiefs my numbers made it Chiefs minus about 8 or 9 in the matchup, not counting for sort of game flow, things like that. And so the fact that the Chargers were driving down 14 and, didn't convert, there was some failures in the red zone, et cetera. I think the spread was just too low in that game, right? It wasn't because of travel disadvantage. It was because the Chiefs are a significantly better team than the Chargers. So I think that was just the correct handicap was bet the Chiefs because they're better.
Yeah, I didn't end up betting the Chiefs, but in pick 'em pools, I took the Chiefs, My line said the Chiefs should have been favored by 7 in that game. It was at 5.5. I heard people say, if I could get Chargers +6, I'd be in on them. And I'm like, well, I don't value the Chargers in this spot. I don't like at 5.5. I didn't make a bet because you don't have to bet every single spot that you like. But I thought the Chiefs were underpriced last week, so I don't believe that the Chargers were were hampered by a rest disadvantage. I just think the Chiefs were a better team. Clark, let's look to the Thursday night football game, Tampa Bay versus Buffalo. I guess my first question is: has Tampa Bay's offense showed us their limitations? At this point, we kind of know what their offense is.
Yeah, I mean, every week they do. I continue to not understand the support for the Bucs offense in the marketplace. That said, we saw Mac Jones and the Patriots kind of have a quote unquote get right spot on offense against the Bills last week with all the Bills' defensive injuries. So is Baker Mayfield capable? Absolutely. Laying that many points on the road. And even on a short week, we talk about a short week visiting team with a big spread is like not a very good spot, but what is it about the Bucs game plan that is so complex that it requires days to prepare, right? They're just running the ball and then throwing downfield to Mike Evans. Like, I can't imagine their offense is going to look that much different on the short week. So, yes, I think the Bucs are very limited. The question is, how much do the Bills' defensive injuries impact them? And if the answer to that is a lot, then I think you could see some interest on the underdog. But the Bills are a much better team playing at home. You got the same spread at home against the Bucs as you got on the road against the Patriots. And to me, the Bucs and Patriots are pretty similar. So I think that says a lot.
Yeah. To me, Tampa cannot run the ball. I don't know why they try it. But Buffalo, even before the Matt Milano injury, the thing we weren't talking about is Buffalo hasn't been good at stopping the run. So I'm very curious if Tampa Bay believes and will have success running the ball. I think the biggest single mismatch in this game is Buffalo's passing game versus the Bucs secondary. And that's the match I want to see. Tampa Bay, so we talked about their 3 fumbles on Atlanta. They are a +7 turnover differential this year, and they have -1 points. That's how much the Bucs, I think, are. Their record's a little bit more fraudulent than people realize. That being said, the only thing I'd even look at is a teaser here for Buffalo. I don't have interest at this number. It's right in line with where I thought the number was going to be. Clark, anything there that you're liking from a betting perspective, or are you still looking at?
I think I like the Bills. Teaser leg great, even against the spread, honestly. The Bills historically have been the kind of team that when they really have an advantage in a game, they press it. We've seen it this year against the Raiders. We saw it against I think they have maybe 3 wins by 28 or more points. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but when they have an advantage, they press it. And I think they could do that here against a Bucs team that they're significantly better than. Baker Mayfield has been, I want to say, I think I looked at every quarterback with at least something like 100 snaps. And Baker Mayfield was the 25th best quarterback on first and second down in terms of EPA per play and success rate, but he was the 3rd best on third down in terms of EPA per play and success rate blended, and or second actually to Patrick Mahomes. And so it's is Baker Mayfield going to sustain this pace on third down? Probably not. That's not typically a signal that we see. We typically see quarterbacks regress to what they do on a down-to-down basis. And so a couple of those third downs don't go their way. Mike Evans drops it, doesn't get his feet in balance, things like that. This could get real ugly for the Bucs, I think.
Yeah, and the Bucs, as far as quality of competition, they've never been out of a game for the most part. Even Detroit didn't pull away until the 4th quarter. The one time that they had a real disparity on who they played was the Eagles, and the Eagles controlled the game script. And when Baker Mayfield has to throw because they're down by multiple scores, those are the games where you could see it getting ugly for the Bucs, who so far have kept most things close because of fortunate game script. This could be a Bills game where they're pissed off a loss, and I could see a world in which they run it up on Tampa Bay, provided that Josh Allen does not continue since he's entered the league, leading the league in turnovers. As long as he doesn't have Brett Favre show up, then I think the Bills should win here. Clark, thanks so much for your time, man.
Yep. Thanks, George. Good talk.
As a reminder, Forward Progress will be back again tomorrow at 2 o'clock with Rob Pizzola, Eric Eager, Suma, and Hitman giving you their best bets and breaking down games from a betting perspective. Drop us a like before you bounce. That's it for me. Thanks to SharpClarke. Thanks to producer Jason. And thanks to you, the audience. Until next time.